Janabala Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Janabala Girivaradari Gopi Janabala Girivaradari Girivaradari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janabala Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Janabala Girivaradari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jam Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivrajakacarya Stokta Sata Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Nam Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasari Shri Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyamakund Radhakund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Mayapur Dham Ki Navadip Dham Ki, Jagannath Puri Dham Ki, Gangamai Jamunamai Ki, Tulsi Maharani Ki, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Gaura Premanandi, all glorious to the assembled devotees, all glorious to the assembled devotees, all glorious to the assembled devotees, all glorious to Shri Shri Guru Angaranga, all glorious to Srila Prabhupada. So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 9, text number 10. Pravartate yatra rajaḥ tamas tayoḥ. Pravartate yatra rajaḥ tamas tayoḥ. Sattvam cha miśram nacha kāla-vikramaḥ. Sattvam cha miśram nacha kāla-vikramaḥ. Na yatra māyā kim utāpare harer. Na yatra māyā kim utāpare harer. Anuvratā yatra surāsurārcitāḥ. Anuvratā yatra surāsurārcitāḥ. pravartate yatra rajas-tamas tayoḥ sattvam cha miśram na cha kāla-vikramaḥ na yatra māyā kim utāpare harer anuvratā yatra surāsurārcitāḥ pravartate yatra rajas-tamas tayoḥ sattvam cha miśram na cha kāla-vikramaḥ na yatra māyā kim utāpare harer anuvratā yatra surāsurārcitāḥ pravartate yatra rajas-tamas tayoḥ sattvam cha miśram na cha kāla-vikramaḥ na yatra māyā kim utāpare harer anuvratā yatra surāsurārcitāḥ pravartate yatra tamas rajas tayoḥ sattvam cha miśram na cha kāla-vikramaḥ yatra māyā kim utāpare harer anuvratā yatra surāsurārcitāḥ yatra rajas-tamas tayoḥ yatra māyā kim utāpare harer anuvratā yatra surāsurārcitāḥ pravartate kāla-vikramaḥ yatra māyā kim utāpare harer anuvratā yatra rajas-tamas tayoḥ sattvam cha miśram na cha kāla-vikramaḥ utāpare harer anuvratā yatra surāsurārcitāḥ rajas-tamas tayoḥ kāla-vikramaḥ yatra surāsurārcitāḥ pravartate prevail yatra wherein rajaḥ tamaḥ the modes of passion and ignorance tayoḥ of both of them sattvam the mode of goodness cha and miśram mixture na never cha and kāla time vikramaḥ influence. Na, neither. Yatra, therein. Māyā, illusory external energy. Kim, what? Uta, there is. Apare, others. Hareḥ, of the personality of Godhead. Anuvratā, devotees. Yatra, wherein. Sura, by the demigods. Asura, and the demons. Arcitāḥ, worshipped. Translation. In that personal abode of the Lord, the material modes of ignorance and passion do not prevail, nor is there any of their influence in goodness. There is no predominance of the influence of time. So what to speak of the illusory external energy, it cannot enter that region. Without discrimination, both the demigods and the demons worship the Lord as devotees. Please repeat. In that personal abode of the Lord, the material modes of ignorance and passion do not prevail, nor is there any of their influence in goodness. There is no predominance of the influence of time. So what to speak of the illusory external energy? It cannot enter that region. Without discrimination, both the demigods and the demons worship the Lord as devotees. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The kingdom of God, or the atmosphere of the Vaikuntha nature, which is called Tripad Vibhuti, is 3 times bigger than the material universes, and is described here as also in the Bhagavad Gita, in a nutshell. This universe, containing billions of stars and planets, is one of the billions of such universes clustered together within the compass of the Mahatattva. And all these millions and billions of universes combined together constitute only 1/4 of the magnitude of the whole creation of the Lord. There is the spiritual sky also. Beyond this sky are the spiritual planets under the names of Vaikuntha, and all of them constitute 3/4 of the entire creation of the Lord. God's creations are always innumerable. Even the leaves of a tree cannot be counted by a man, nor can the hairs on his head. However, foolish men are puffed up with the idea of becoming God himself, though unable to create a hair of their own bodies. Man may discover so many wonderful vehicles of journey, but even if he reaches the moon by his much advertised spacecraft, he cannot remain there. The sane man, therefore, without being puffed up as if he were the God of the universe, abides by the instructions of the Vedic literature, the easiest way to acquire knowledge in transcendence. So let us know through the authority of the Srimad Bhagavatam of the nature and constitution of the transcendental world beyond the material sky. In that sky, the material qualities, especially the qualities of ignorance and passion, are completely absent. The mode of ignorance influences a living entity to the habit of lust and hankering, and this means that in the Vaikuntha lokas, the living entities are free from these 2 things. As confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, in the Brahma Bhuta stage of life, one becomes free from hankering and lamentation. Therefore, the conclusion is that the inhabitants of the Vaikuntha planets are all Brahma Bhuta living entities, as distinguished from the mundane creatures who are all compact in hankering and lamentation. When one is not in the modes of ignorance and passion, one is supposed to be situated in the mode of goodness in the material world. Goodness in the material world also at times becomes contaminated by touches of the modes of passion and ignorance. In the Vaikuntha loka, it is unalloyed goodness only. The whole situation there is one of freedom from the illusory manifestation of the external energy. Although illusory energy is also part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, illusory energy is differentiated from the Lord. The illusory energy is not, however, false, as claimed by the monist philosophers. The rope, accepted as a snake, may be an illusion to a particular person, but the rope is a fact, and the snake is also a fact. The illusion of water on the hot desert may be illusion for the ignorant animal searching for water in the desert, but the desert and water are actual facts. Therefore, the material creation of the Lord may be an illusion to the non-devotee, but to a devotee, even the material creation of the Lord is a fact as the manifestation of his external energy. But this energy of the Lord is not all. The Lord has his internal energy also, which has another creation known to be the Vaikuntha Lokas, where there is no ignorance, no passion, no illusion, and no past and present. With a poor fund of knowledge, one may be unable to understand the existence of such things as the Vaikuntha atmosphere, but that does not nullify its existence. The spacecraft cannot reach these planets. That spacecraft cannot reach these planets does not mean that there are no such planets, for they are described in the revealed scriptures. As quoted by Srila Jiva Goswami, we can know from the Narad Pancharatra that the transcendental world, or the Vaikuntha atmosphere, is enriched with transcendental qualities. These transcendental qualities, as revealed through the devotional service of the Lord, are distinct from the mundane qualities of ignorance, passion, and goodness. Such qualities are not attainable by the non-devotee class of men. In the Padma Purana Uttarakhand, it is stated that beyond the 1/4 part of God's creation is the 3/4 manifestation. The marginal line between the material manifestation and the spiritual manifestation is the Viraj river. And beyond the Viraj, which is a transcendental current flowing from the perspiration of the body of the Lord, there is the 3/4 manifestation of God's creation. This part is eternal, everlasting, without deterioration, and unlimited. And it contains the highest perfectional stage of living conditions. In the Shankhya Kaumudi, it is stated that unalloyed goodness or transcendence is just the opposite to the material modes. All living entities there are eternally associated without any break, and the Lord is the chief and prime entity. In the Agama Puranas also, the transcendental abode is described as follows. The associated members there are free to go everywhere within the creation of the Lord, and there is no limit to such creation, particularly in the region of the 3/4 magnitude. Since the nature of that region is unlimited, there is no history of such association, nor is there end of it. The conclusion may be drawn that because of the complete absence of the mundane qualities of ignorance and passion, there is no question of creation nor of annihilation. In the material world, everything is created and everything is annihilated, and the duration of life between the creation and annihilation is temporary. In the transcendental realm, there is no creation and no destruction, and thus the duration of life is eternal, unlimitedly. In other words, everything in the transcendental world is everlasting, full of knowledge and bliss, without deterioration. Since there is no deterioration, there is no past, present, and future in the estimation of time. It is clearly stated in this verse that the influence of time is conspicuous by its absence. The whole material existence is manifested by actions and reactions of elements which make the influence of time prominent in the matter of past, present, and future. There are no such actions and reactions of cause and effects there, as the cycle of birth, growth, existence, transformations, deterioration, and annihilation, the 6 material changes, are not existent there. It is the unalloyed manifestation of the energy of the Lord without illusion as experienced here in the material world. The whole Vaikuntha existence proclaims that everyone there is a follower of the Lord. The Lord is the chief leader there without any competition for leadership, and the people in general are all followers of the Lord. It is confirmed in the Vedas, therefore, that the Lord and the chief leader and all other living entities are subordinate to him. Sorry, the Lord is the chief leader and all other living entities are subordinate to him. For only the Lord satisfies all the needs of all other living entities. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. It's a very long purport, so I'll just read the translation one more time. In that personal abode of the Lord, the material modes of ignorance and passion do not prevail, nor is there any of their influence in goodness. There is no predominance of the influences of time, so what to speak of the illusory external energy? It cannot enter that region. Without discrimination, both the demigods and the demons worship the Lord as devotees. So a very long purport there, describing the situation of the creation of the Lord. And we see that I was quite taken by this description that our universe is one of many thousand clustered together and separated by from the spiritual realm by the Viraj River. Billions and billions of universes, these eggs, these global egg-shaped universes, all stacked together. And then there's the Viraj River, and then there's the transcendental spiritual sky and the spiritual planets. And I was thinking about the contrast of that, how it's like frog spawn. If you go into a pond or a river, you see this big cluster of eggs, frog spawn eggs, all gelatinous and slimy and disgusting. So this is the difference between the material creation, the 1/4 of the creation, and the 3/4. The other side of the river is the pure, scintillating spiritual sky and all the Vaikuntha planets. And we are stacked in these eggs of universes, all billions of them, all stacked together. It reminded me, if any of you have seen that movie, The Matrix, when the protagonist, Neo, wakes from his so-called illusion. He wakes up in a pod of amniotic fluid, and he's plugged into a huge machine which is using him as a battery. His human life was an illusion, and he just serves as a battery. And there are many of these, millions of these stacks of pods where human beings are raised to be batteries for the machine, the Matrix. So there's a lot of similarity actually there, because these material universes, they are prisons like that pod, inescapable prisons. There's a famous prison in America called Alcatraz, and it used to be well known because no one could escape from there. It was in the Hudson Bay, and strong currents were there, and no one could escape. I think one person managed to escape. So these material universes are impossible to escape. There's no escape. And another interesting thing is that these material universes, as a prison, you don't even know that you're in that prison. It's like here we are in one of these millions of universes. The sole purpose for this universe is for us to be sitting in this room listening to Srimad Bhagavatam. That's all it's for. Because everything is a waste of time. The whole thing is just what's the word? Recycling of souls. The souls are being recycled through many forms, different forms, as animals, as human beings. And we keep going through this recycling and recycling endlessly until finally we learn our lessons that we actually don't belong here, that this place is a hellish place. And when we learn that lesson, then Krishna brings us into the association of devotees and reveals to us this knowledge. So the world is so, everyone is so concerned about the things of the world. the politics, what everyone else is doing. We become so immersed in this cocoon of illusion, whereas actually it's just this, we're just stacked amongst these millions of other universes until we learn to come to Krishna consciousness, until we have the desire to come to Krishna consciousness. So the interesting thing about the earth is that life on earth is dependent on death. There has to be death for there to be life. It's just inescapable. The way in school I teach an introduction to agricultural systems, natural agricultural systems, and we see how the earth is full of organisms which are all living on decaying bodies of bugs and vegetables and everything else. It's all, that sea of death is the seedbed for life. Death and life, they just concomitant, they just hand in hand. One thing leads to the other. It's interesting how when you look out of the window it looks so beautiful, but actually there's a horror show going on. I was showing the boys, there's one documentary, it's called The Biggest Little Farm, and it's about a couple who lived in San Diego who wanted to live a more simple life, and they decided they wanted to develop a natural farm. So they told their friends and family, and most people made fun of them, but one person got to hear about it and decided to invest and purchased them a farm in north of Los Angeles, 200 acres of land. And that farm had apple trees and avocados growing on it. And so they got a teacher to come and help them to create a natural farm. And in the beginning, they planted something like 71 varieties of stone fruit, like plums and peaches and things like that. And the teacher told them to get animals. So because diversity, he was describing how nature, if you look at nature, if you go to a forest, I used to live in South India in a rainforest near Mangalore. And if you go into the rainforest, you'll find jackfruits, mangoes, jamuns. So many fruits are growing wild in the forest. You can actually live off of the fruits of the forest. Some people say that these fruits were actually grown by sages in the many years gone by that used to live in the forest. So you find all these fruits and other eatable foodstuffs, vegetables of various descriptions in the forest. Now you never see the government flying over with dropping tons of compost or spraying the place with pesticide. These forests, actually India used to be 90% forest way back before the British came. The natural condition of the earth is forest, and the forest takes care of itself completely. There was one man in the 1970s. In 1970, he got a big glass bottle, and in that bottle he put some soil, some seeds, and some water, and then he sealed it. And the seeds started to turn into a plant, and the plant grew into this bottle. And then after 2 years, he opened it up, put a little water in it, and then closed it. And then for the next 50 years, it just continued to grow. There was always this green plant inside the bottle. It was a completely self-contained ecosystem. The plant was producing oxygen. The oxygen was helping it to grow. The leaves would fall off, dead leaves would fall off and become food. It's amazing how Krishna is created, even though it's horrific in the sense of it's so gross and gelatinous and so many creepy crawlies and other really gross things. But Krishna has arranged this alternate universe where it's all completely self-sustaining. And the people, I was introducing them to something called permaculture, which is a system of agriculture which is sustainable. And it's understood in that system, the founder of that system was saying that if you look at the forest, you don't have to put anything in the forest. Everything is self-contained. It grows perfectly, will continue to grow forever. There's just one factor which comes into it, and that's the sun. So this man who had a glass bottle with his plants inside the glass bottle is called a terrarium. He had it sitting in the sun, and the sun was the one factor which fed it. Everything grows from photosynthesis, from sunlight. So Krishna's created this amazing situation where you have this self-sustaining system which is both gross and at the same time almost like a miracle. It's miraculous. It is a miracle, actually. So that's one aspect. So then, on the other side of the Vraj river, we have this place, the spiritual sky, and the Vaikuntha planets. And Prabhupada describes as being 3/4 of the creation. And he describes how the residents there are free to go everywhere within the unlimited creation. So this is when we've learned our lesson and we've been to enough Bhagavatam classes and we've chanted our rounds nicely and we've come to the stage where we realize the material world is just a terrible place to be, then we get transferred to that place. But of course we have to have the right kind of qualification, and that qualification is an attitude of surrender, compassion, mercy. We were reading recently about Haridas Thakur and how when he was being taken to the 21 marketplaces to be beaten by the Nawab's men, the Nawab had instructed them. He said that if you survive this, then I will consider your religion to be worthy. But if you don't survive this, and he didn't think for a minute that he was going to survive being beaten in these marketplaces. So Haridas is taken to these marketplaces, and the soldiers of the Nawab are beating him mercilessly. They're putting all their energy and effort into beating him, because they know that if they don't kill him, the Nawab will become angry and kill them. So they're putting all their energy and effort into beating Haridas, and he doesn't feel any of it. Even though he's being, from the external point of view, he shouldn't be able to survive. So they're taking from one marketplace to another, they're beating him, and he is just not affected whatsoever. But then he begins to see how they are becoming fearful. The soldiers are becoming fearful because they know that they will be killed by the Nawab. So they plead with Haridas, please, die. If you don't die, we will die. Please. So Haridas is feeling so merciful that he agrees, okay, I will die. So then Haridas is a yogi. Anyone who takes to Krishna consciousness and perfects Krishna consciousness has these qualifications of being a yogi. So he suspends his life airs, so it appears that he dies. And then the soldiers are so relieved that, they're relieved and astonished at the same time, because they were trying to kill him, but despite their best efforts, he wouldn't die. And then when they plead with him to die, he goes, okay, if that's what you need, I will die. Happily. So we also see with Prahlad Maharaj, similar, how his father was torturing him. I mean, the worst tortures, horrible attempts to murder Prahlad Maharaj. And the same thing, Prahlad Maharaj was so absorbed in the holy name, so ecstatic in that association of Krishna. He had that Krishna prema. Nothing could touch him. So many ways Hiranyakashipu tried to kill him, but nothing could touch him. And then in the end, when finally Nrsingadev appears, Prahlad wants to forgive his father, Hiranyakashipu. And then of course we hear about Jesus Christ, how similarly when he was being crucified, he said, they know not what they do. They don't realize, and he wanted to be merciful to them. He was praying to the Lord to please be merciful to them. So this is the quality that we have to try to achieve. Instead of being, sometimes I speak to the boys in school, sometimes, in a school, there's rivalry and some fighting, and somebody does something to somebody, and they get very upset, and then they're like, I will never forgive him. And sometimes sometimes people hold grudges their whole life against somebody that did something to them in school. They can't give it up. I will never forgive him. Such anger. So if we have that kind of anger, if we harbor those kinds of feelings in our heart, we will have to stay in this material world forever. Because we have to realize that everyone is conditioned. Prahlad realized his father was conditioned. Haridas realized these people are conditioned. They have their expectations, and that's their life. That's their identity. So let me set an example. So we see by these great saints and sages how they set this example of selflessness. And then when we can embody that kind of attitude, then we become fit for going back to home, back to Godhead. And then we can escape this matrix of these millions and millions of times. And then finally we come here and we get this opportunity. But we have to learn this tolerance, this compassion, this ability to forgive. And then Krishna becomes very pleased when he sees on the TV, and I was watching awestruck, as Neil Armstrong, he went down that last ladder, and he said, this is one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. And it was like, so Prabhupada was watching that with the devotees. There was a handful of devotees around Prabhupada watching that. And most of the devotees, I don't know, but they were probably thinking, wow, the men on the moon. And then Prabhupada says, they did not go. The whole world is watching these men walking on the moon, supposedly. And Prabhupada says, they did not go. I thought that was really amazing, actually. Prabhupada had such deep understanding of the material world and of the personalities in the material world, especially, in having appeared in India under the British and seeing the hypocrisy of the British rulers, and seeing all the different things that they got up to and all the propaganda. Prabhupada knew what these demons are up to. And he describes in this purport what to speak of whether they went there or not. Even if they were to go there, what's the point? What can you do? You can't even... we understand actually that the moon is a heavenly planet. It's Sambha rasa. There are demigod personalities living there. It's a beautiful place. And it's not what we see in the sky. So Prabhupada describes that if you want to go there, you have to have the body fit for that. You can go there. I remember when I first joined I was given this book, Easy Journey to Other Planets. And everyone in the world was, the NASA space program, the Apollo space program was on everyone's mind, because it was just amazing. Humans are going into space to the moon. And then Mars is next, And then Prabhupada describes, he capitalized on that fascination with space travel to say, yes, you can go to these planets, but what's the point? If you don't have the body, the adhikar to go to these planets, then you cannot. You may be able to produce some vehicle which can defy the laws of nature and take you out of this earthly realm up into space. But for what? It's just another place in the material world. What will you do there? So this is the situation that everyone is captivated by this kind of foolishness. The whole world is captivated. Right now, I'm sure most of India is, Jai Hind, I love my India. We are going to the moon. Yes. Everyone, I'm sure, is very, amazed by that. But Prabhupada said, he said at one point, it's all done in a studio. They have not gone. It's all done in studios by just deception, fooling the people to make money. You know how much money NASA spends and spent over the years billions and billions. Now, imagine if they just made a movie of this whole thing. Where did all that money go? Somebody got very, very rich. Quite a few people got very, very rich from this whole deception. Prabhupada says this is a deception. So, this is the situation. The whole world is captured by this foolishness. And somehow or another, I remember when I first joined, we knew this. Prabhupada made it very clear that these people are just demons. Why are we having any kind of faith in anything they say? But as time has gone by, we seem to have kind of become, we seem to have sought, what's the word? Acceptance. We want to be accepted by the world. And so therefore we have to make a show of kowtowing to the leaders, the demon leaders of this world. But actually, we should understand that we should take out the Srimad Bhagavatam very seriously. And Prabhupada said, we are ISKCON, a society to be independent from outside help. So we should actually take that seriously and understand that whatever they do out there, just as Srila Bhaktisiddhanta told Srila Prabhupada, whatever the British are doing, you'll never, whether you get rid of them or not, Krishna consciousness is far more important. You have to take to Krishna consciousness. All this politics, all of this is just nonsense. Subhash Chandra Bose one time, he was the leader of the Indian resistance. He came to see Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. And because he heard that Bhaktisiddhanta was very good at speaking to people and getting young people to join his cause. So Subhash Chandra Bose went to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta and asked him, please, can you provide some people for this struggle against the British? We need some serious people who can dedicate themselves to this. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, well, suppose I were to give you somebody, and that person, he's fighting the British, and then as he's dying, he's remembering the British. So then he will take birth as an Englishman. Who will he support then? Is he going to support the Indian cause? No. So Subhash Chandra Bose was astonished, actually, that this sadhu had such a clear understanding. He'd never thought of it before. People think, religion, the religionists, they speak nice words, it's all very fancy and it's all nice, and they have their renunciation and their prayers and their mantras and everything like that. But it's that's their thing, and we've got our thing, and let everyone live. But he was very shocked that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta actually had that vision, that deep vision, that transcendental vision to see the state of the actual situation, that we don't belong in this material world, whether it's this person in power or that person in power. There will always be someone in power. That's the nature of this world. People are vying to be little personalities of Godhead. They're all been put here specifically for that purpose, to have the opportunity to become a little personality of Godhead and exercise power. I'll tell one more little story. I was living in South India, in Bangalore. I was working for Mayapur project. We had an office in Bangalore, making the design for the town of Mayapur. And I had to leave India. And I had to close our office down. And consequently, I was really late for getting my permission to leave India from the FRO. So I came back to Bangalore one day after I should have gotten permission to leave the country, should have left the country. So I went to meet to the police station, and they saw, this is expired. So they took me in to meet the chief constable, and he's sitting behind this big, big desk. And there are many people lined up talking to him, and he's giving orders and bang, stamping things and calling on the phone. And finally, after 45 minutes, he sees me. He says, so, you have overstayed your visa. You will go to prison. And then he continues to deal with people and stamping things and for another 45 minutes. And then he looks at me again and says, yes, you will go to prison. This is very bad. Why have you done this? And then again, and I'm standing there, for an hour and a half in front of his desk, looking as humble as I can, not really sure whether, whether he really means it or not. And then finally he says, so, you will go to prison. However, because you have come just one day before your visa has expired, or after your visa has expired, I will let you pass, but never do this again. And I could see he was really enjoying You know, that power that he had over me, seeing me squirm there, uncertain whether I was going to go to jail, thinking I'm letting it sink in that you will go to jail. You know, in an Indian jail. I wasn't looking forward to that. But that's it. The people come here because they crave that kind of importance and power to exercise over others. And this is the place for it. Okay, so I'll stop there. Any comments or questions? Yes.
Prabhuji, thank you for the class. There is one interesting point I saw in the translation, that the demigods and even the demons worship. Can you explain this aspect? Like, how are demons there in the spiritual world?
I was hoping no one would ask that question. Prabhuji, maybe you could answer that question. Why is it? It says here, both the demigods and the demons worship the Lord as devotees, without discrimination.
Just, I don't have any quotes from the acharyas, but I'm just philosophically speculating. In these pastimes of the Lord, where he slays demons and goes through all these things when he comes to the material world, it may also be going on there. That's the only thing that occurs to me.
Right. Yes.
It's exciting,
Yeah.
Like
definitely.
Krishna arranges all these different pastimes in the material world to attract people's attention, but there's a certain relish that he experiences, with these pastimes. So.
Yeah, and of course we know that everyone is a devotee. I mean, ultimately we are all devotees. Prabhupada makes that point. So, when Mataji had a question first.
I just recently heard the answer to that question was that actually they are devotees, like you just said, and they are taking the form of a demon for Krishna's enjoyment. So they're all actually all devotees, like you just said. I just wanted to ask you about, you mentioned in the class that when one takes to Krishna consciousness, he's not bereft of the yogic abilities. Can you expand a bit more on that, please? Not that it is relevant. When one takes to Krishna consciousness, you said that one is not bereft of yogic abilities. Can you expand on that? Not that it is so attractive to devotees, but please explain more.
Yeah, what I was saying was that when you've reached the level of pure devotion, then you have access to these. So we saw with Haridas, he had access to that ability to suspend his life breath. So it's described that actually the jiva soul, when he's empowered, can do almost anything. It can create a flying city, can create a planet. The jiva soul actually has incredible abilities when Krishna blesses him and how do you say, benedicts him with those things. So in the beginning stages, we don't have that. But when one has perfected his Krishna consciousness, then that access is there. Even Prabhupada had that, but he didn't want to use it because he didn't want, it makes things cheap, miracles.
You spoke about that story of the man and the woman who started a farm, but you didn't finish that story.
Oh yeah, well they basically, they grew these trees, and then they, between the trees they planted grasses, because normally they didn't used to do that. But the soil washes away if you don't do that. Nature never leaves ground empty. It always populates the ground. So they put grasses between the trees. But then snails came. And snails started eating the leaves of the fruit trees. So what to do? But they had ducks. And they realized that ducks love snails. So they put the ducks in the place between the trees. And the ducks ate the snails. So that problem was solved by nature. Then the next problem was they had gophers. Gophers are like little rats or moles that live under the ground. They were eating the roots of the trees. So what to do about the gophers? They installed boxes which are good for owls to live in. And after a few months, about 90 owls moved into their farm and started eating the gophers. So the gopher problem was solved. And then after 3 years, the fruit started to grow, but the birds came along and saw the fruits and thought, fantastic. So the birds came down and started eating 70% of the fruit. So their teacher had told them, it will take 7 years for the balance to come. You've taken something that was imbalanced, and for the balance to come will take 7 years. You need to diversify as much as possible. So on the, I think the 5th or 6th year, hawks started to move in. Hawks eat birds, and the very sight of a hawk will frighten away the birds. So within a few years, the hawks came, and the bird problem was dissipated. So one by one, as they tried to to create a natural growing system, they faced many challenges, but one by one, nature stepped in and filled the void and created the balance. So they ended up having this fantastic farm, which was fully natural, producing so many varieties of fruits, and all done according to nature's system, natural system, as opposed to the agribusiness which we see in the world now, where it's just one crop which they have to drown in fertilizers and pesticides, and becomes very unhealthy and is not sustainable. So in that way, actually, I have a little forest in Rajapur. I'm growing about 15 or 20 varieties of fruits, and it's working very nicely. And I think Jananivas Prabhu told me that anyone who gardens in Vraj and gives the fruits to the devotees is building his garden in the spiritual world. So I was very, very satisfied to hear that. So yeah, I hope that answered your question. Guruji, you had another thing to say?
Yeah. Just a quick point, about Prabhupada demonstrated so many mystic powers. I mean, just the mere fact of what he did in such a short period of time, translated so many books, and then managed the spreading of establishing over 100 temples, and just attracted so many people. But there's story after story of how he knew what was going on in someone's mind, and just incredible. But that's, he had just had an incredibly empowered personality.
Yeah. Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, that's the thing. The devotees can see those miracles. The materialists, they can't see such miracles. And Prabhupada didn't make any of those, like turning water into wine, or any of those kinds of miracles. But there's a fact. Everything he did was miraculous. And the devotees, we can see that. We're blessed to have that vision, to see the power of pure devotion. Okay, it's 9 o'clock. We'll end here. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.